Welcome to Plot Twist Radio, the show where creativity, storytelling, and the unpredictable path of the creative life all collide. I'm your host, Erin Egnatz. Michael, welcome to the show.
Hi, happy to be here.
It's great to have you. Can you introduce yourself to the audience?
Sure. Michael Wendroff. I was a marketing guy, but I am now happy to say that I'm an author. My debut thriller was published by Bloomsbury, at first in hardcover, audiobook, and ebook. And just about a month or so ago, it was published in paperback as well. The paperback actually has a book club discussion guide as part of it because it was very popular with book clubs. And the book was also sold by my agent in some foreign languages, Italian, Hungarian, and Japanese. And based on the sales and the reviews for my novel, What Goes Around, I've been given a contract for a second thriller that I'm writing now.
That's very exciting. Congratulations on the success there.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So, what actually made you go from marketing to writing?
Well, I always wanted to write a novel. And, it took many, many years. I had a whole career in marketing, working for large corporations, and then I was running my own global marketing strategy firm. And then the pandemic hit. And basically, there you couldn't do anything else. I mean, in my town, you couldn't even go to the beach, let alone play tennis or go to the movies or eat. So, no more excuses. I finally had to go ahead and do what I always wanted to do, which is to write a novel. And and I did. And actually, the impetus for my novel goes around is what my mother said to me. These I was put on her chest. She looked deeply into my eyes and she said, "Oh, how nice to see you again." And it was the again part that always intrigued me. I had to do something with that. And what I did with it is it plays into the major twist ending of my novel.
Very cool. Very interesting. So, what can you tell us about what goes around without giving away spoilers, of course?
Well, it follows these two detectives who are investigating mysterious shootings in a small town. The two detectives are paired together and they hate each other. One's a guy, like a Jack Reacher type guy, big physical guy. The other's a brilliant and beautiful woman. And eventually, their relationship does change a bit. But while investigating these shootings, they enter into these mysterious worlds of these crazy groups, these incels and boogaloo boys and all these crazies. And there's lots of twists and turns along the way, and ending with that major twist ending. It goes a little to a different place than a normal thriller, so it's like a thriller plus. But it's basically about love, life, and the eternal bonds that transcend time.
That's awesome. So, thrillers, they live and die on tension. What's your approach to building suspense and holding on to that tension?
You are absolutely right. And, for me, I read a lot in this category, lots of thrillers, lots of mysteries. So I know what I liked. And the way I incorporate that into my writing is, first of all, I write very short chapters because I think that keeps the story moving along for the reader. And I think, especially these days with younger readers, that, there's so many competing things for their entertainment dollar, whether video games or even on the websites, the articles are so short. So, I think that having short chapters not only helps with the pace, but also is something that readers today really want. So that's one thing. And then the other thing I would say is that I try and end every chapter on a cliffhanger. It could be a physical one, it could be a psychological cliffhanger, or it can be an emotional one. And then I strive to start the next chapter with a very intriguing sentence. So that's what seems to be working for me. I mean, if you look at my reviews, they all talk about how, can't put it down, lost sleep, real page turner. So that's the kind of book I like to read, and that's the kind of book I'm happy to have written.
That's a great strategy, and you're right. The shorter chapters I've noticed, they used to be really long chapters that would, be 2, 3, 4,000 words, but now they're much shorter. And you're right, it helps with the flow of the book quite a bit. I've noticed that with many authors now.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you literally wrote your MBA thesis on marketing and publishing. How different is the industry today versus as you were going through college?
Yeah, it is interesting because, it was when I was getting my, MBA from NYU that I first married my love of books, and I come from a bit of a book background, but with my newfound love of marketing, and yes, you're right, my thesis was on marketing in the publishing industry. Now this is going back a bit for sure, but it was an interesting experience because I got to interview a lot of publishing executives, and, in fact, my thesis ended up being excerpted in the trade journal, which is called Publishers Weekly, is the trade journal for the industry, and, they put it in 3 of their editions, and, they actually, paid me, so I got paid for writing my thesis, and that was the first time I got paid for writing in general, and I liked that. I certainly did. But what I've certainly, back when I wrote it, things have changed dramatically, and I would say that, any author today or would-be authors in your audience, they have to know that, 50% of your job as an author is writing. The other 50% is, pushing your novel, because unless you're Stephen King or Harlan Coben, it's really up to the authors to do their selling, their marketing. Um and, I've at a bit of an advantage because of my background in, marketing for major corporations and going on sales calls with the salespeople. For example, if I'll go to local author, I'll look around me and the tables will have other authors, and the authors are sitting behind the table in their chair. I'm out front pushing my book, and I sell out all the time. And I understand authors. A lot of authors tend to be introverted, but that's my marketing background that helps. But I encourage all of your authors to go out there and push for everything. And the more you do it, the easier it comes. So go on great podcasts like yours. Push with local media. I've been able to get local newspaper articles, features about myself, local magazine. I was on the cover. But it takes a lot of work. You gotta be willing to put in the work, and, if you do it, you can be successful.
Yes, absolutely. And that is very, very important. As you said, unless you're one of the big time authors, it's hard. It is a hard industry because there's so many books out there,
Oh god.
every day there's hundreds that come out. So you get lost in the weeds very quickly.
I think 12,000,000 is the number that Amazon had published last year.
Oh my gosh. That's even more than I thought.
Yeah.
Well, there you go. So, yep, marketing is key there. So, you've worked with some big names. What did you absorb from being around writers at that level?
Well, I mean, this is going back into my history again. My mother, besides, giving me the impetus for that novel when I was born, she actually remarried a literary agent, Henry Morrison. And, for those in your audience who don't know that much about literary agents are the key people in publishing today, at least if you wanna, get published by a traditional publisher. Having the option to self-publish is great, but in terms of traditional publishing, you need an agent. Publishers will not look at your manuscript unless it comes through a literary agent. And, agents will do many things for you if you're able to get one. I mean, that's the first thing, which I really believe that it's harder to get a literary agent to take you on is to sell your book once you have a literary agent. So the tough part is getting one, and you got to query a lot of agents, go through all that. But once you have them, a lot of the agents are actually your first editor, beyond your family, etc. So they will give, ideas on your book that will make it better. So for them to represent to publishers. And then, they'll sell additional rights. I mentioned what, foreign rights that were sold to What Goes Around. And, if you're lucky enough to get a publisher to publish you, they'll negotiate the contract, of course, and take you through all the contract details and all of that. So they are key. And, for me, growing up with a literary agent as a stepfather, he specialized in the categories I liked in mysteries and thrillers. So I got to read all those for free and um, to meet a lot of authors. In fact, there was this one time when I was young and we were invited to stay over at Robert Ludlum's winter home in St. Thomas. And Robert Ludlum, a lot of people know him from the Bourne Identity, the Matt Damon movies. So, he wrote a slew of best selling books. And I remember waking up one morning and, going up early to the living room where he was sitting, and he had a yellow legal pad out and a number 2 Daikon Ticonderoga pencil, and he was scribbling away, and that's how he wrote his 450-page novels by hand. I mean, I could not believe it. I mean, thank God, I admired his prose and his plotting, but, good thing when it came time for me to write mine, I had a PC. I could not do that for sure. But, it was very cool meeting a lot of authors and, what I found in general is that authors are the nicest people and, as a group, they're not in competition with each other at all. They're always very helpful. So it's a great world, being among them for sure.
I agree, I agree. Authors are much different than some of the other people in the entertainment industry. I guess if the authors are in the entertainment industry, I guess they are. But yes, they are usually very kind and very supportive of one another, and I love that about the community.
For sure.
So your book, as you were saying, it got international rights already. That's awesome. Did you expect that kind of reach right out of the gate?
I hoped for it because, growing up in a literary agent background, when I was going to college and working there part time, I was in charge of selling foreign rights or helping with that. So I knew about it. It was a possibility, but I was very happy because these days it's more and more unusual. So I was thrilled for
Absolutely. So I have to ask because I'm a historian, so this is something that is very intriguing to me. Your great grandfather worked with Thomas Edison. That is quite intriguing because when I was getting my master's degree, I was actually transcribing a lot of letters and correspondence for Thomas Edison. So I'm curious what
what?
your great grandfather did.
Yeah, it was very cool. He was at, the University of Copenhagen in Denmark, and, he was doing research there, and, I'm not sure exactly how the connection was made, but, Thomas Edison brought him over to work with his New Jersey labs, and so that's where my mother was born in New Jersey, in, South Orange, where the labs were, and, my grandfather holds some pens, including for great-grandfather including for, plastic buttons. So, he was actually known as the Button King around town after he made a lot of money off of buttons, which his son lost, but I proudly try and wear button-down shirts.
So getting back to your book, if What Goes Around became a movie tomorrow, who's your dream cast?
Boy. I don't know, I'd have to say, maybe Matt Damon is the Jack detective. Although there's a TV series of Lee Child's Jack Reacher, and the guy that plays Reacher in that, he'd be a pretty good one too. So, yeah, I don't that's a tough one. It's a good question. I'll have to give some more thought to that. And, that would certainly be the dream for something being made into the movies. I do have, some feelers out there, so we'll keep our fingers crossed and, we'll see.
You have the perfect story for Hollywood, so I think that I hope it ends up happening for you because it would be a great movie or miniseries, I don't know.
A lot of people do say a miniseries would be terrific, Netflix or Prime, yeah.
Yeah, and they're really getting into the books right now. I've noticed a lot of people I've noticed a lot of correspondence about that. I see it pop up on all the, like, media things, and I'm like, "Oh, maybe I should pitch one of my books," but I'm just too afraid.
Go for it.
Yeah, why not? What's the worst they could say? No. But so you mentioned that you signed on for another book. Is that what's up next for you?
Yes, yes. So my publisher did offer me a contract, seeing the sales and reviews of what goes around, and this book is actually a prequel. So it does have, and I just finished the first draft. So it does have the two main characters from what goes around, the two main detectives. It's kind of fun for me to put in the little breadcrumbs as to what happens and what goes around to see them in this book. So it's been really cool. Tentative name is You Reap, as in you reap what you sow. So first one was What Goes Around, which, I love the name because I think in the consumer's mind, in the reader's mind, they immediately say, "What goes around comes around," so that they complete the thought, and you've made it a connection in their brains, right from the start. So we have What Goes Around, and then You Reap, which, also has kind of a I don't know if I call it a spiritual, uh, part in the twist ending, but somewhere in that realm. And then in You Reap, it's actually a life, a near-death experience that happens in the, twist. But it's fun, and, I really enjoy, the whole writing process so much. I mean, for me, writing is really in 3 parts. So, the first part for me is to, um, do the plotting, come up with the big ideas. I could never do that. I just need to know what's the twist at the ending gonna be, what are the twists along the way that are gonna happen, what are my character arcs gonna be? I just need to know all that before I can start writing, and, it's not like the writing doesn't evolve. It does. I mean, there was this time when I was writing What Goes Around, and it called for one of the characters to be killed off. And I gotten to really like this character. I really enjoyed him. Yeah, we had some good conversations. And yes, am I crazy? These characters are talking to me. Yeah, I am. But what I did then is I had my plot, but I had to change my plot because I couldn't kill off this character. I couldn't do it. But then similar thing happened, and there was another person who came time in the book that this one was supposed to be killed, and this one, the plot and the storyline, I had to do it, even though I really love. For the whole next week, my wife is saying, "Why are you so depressed? Why are you walking around like crazy? Yeah, this character's not real." But to the authors, as you know, these characters are real. So, for me, number 1 is plotting, and then the second, is doing the research. And, when I wrote What Goes Around, AI didn't exist, so it was Googling a million articles and learning because my book deals with some of these crazy groups as well as there's stuff on guns, and I didn't know anything about any of that, so there was a lot of research, but what I found is that the best kind of research is talking to the people that actually do the things that are like what the characters in your book are doing. So, I was lucky in my community, I got to talk with FBI agents. I got to talk to chief of police. Importantly, my town has a female detective, and I got to talk to her, and that's very important for my book. That's a key character, and she was great. I mean, she told me so many anecdotes and insider info that made it into my book. It was terrific. So, talking to those type of people is the best kind of research. Now, I don't think I spoke to any serial killers. But who knows?
You may have and
And
you didn't
then
know
and
it.
there are some walking around, there are some walking around. Um, and then, the third part is the actual writing, of course. My process is really just to on my PC, the story, just get the story moving. Don't worry about the writing itself, certainly not grammar or punctuation, but not even the words or the flow, nothing like that. And then I will, let's say it's day 2, I'll go back and I'll review what I had scribbled out the day before, and that's when I'll try and make it into real writing. That's when I'll make sure every sentence fits with these others in the paragraph, and every word in the sentence fits with the other words. And I'll add the metaphors and add the analogies and a bit of poetry in to some degree. So that's where the real writing comes in. And then when I'm done with that, I'll scribble away my PC the next section and review that. So that's, that's the process every day. Scribble it out, refine, scribble it out until, of course, I can write my 2 favorite words, which are the end.
Yes. Love that. Love that. So where can the audience find you?
So my books are in bookstores, but you could also get them online, Amazon.com. And I do have a website, michaelwendroff.com. And, if there are would-be writers or just people who've read my book that have questions, my email address is on my website, and I respond to every email I get. Budding writers out there, I'd love to help. I mean, if you do have an audience of aspiring writers in there, you know, a quick piece of advice would be that, besides reading in your genre, which is key, don't always, I always make sure I certainly see what's on the bestseller list and read those. So I keep in tune with tastes. Um, and I also encourage you to write every day, even if it's for 5 minutes, because there is this continuity you get into with the whole experience. But also, there's this craft to writing. So, make sure you learn your craft. Numerous ways to do that. You can join writers groups if you have one, but you can also take online courses. There are plenty. I think it was from B took a course from James Patterson, from Harlan Coben, and from Lee Child, and they were great. There's like 15 episodes, and they'll teach different aspects of writing, and they don't always agree, but that's fine too. You can learn what works for you. And, the last thing I'd say is, there are a lot of conferences of different categories, you may be interested in. So, for example, I'm heading off to Thriller Fest in New York City, which is a thriller writers conference. And at that, besides the social events, which are very important to, make your contacts, but, there's a few days of, like, mini seminars, like hour sessions on different aspects of writing, perspective and tense and what to do with the middle of your book and all of that kind of thing. So, any aspiring writers out there, practice your craft.
Absolutely. Excellent advice. Excellent advice. And I know that there are a lot of aspiring writers that are listening because I get messages about it all the time. So that is excellent advice. Thank you. And thank you for joining me. This has been a great conversation.
Absolutely, a lot of fun.
Yes.